His farming poems have been reviewed by New York Times. He's received the Washington State Book Award. He's been featured on PBS's NewsHour. His new book, Stubble Field, like that, is a fourth collection of farming poems from Silverfish Review. And he is going to regale us this evening with a story. This is his third time that you've appeared in Clover, I do believe. Here's Paul Hunter.
Thank you, Norman and Mary. I can't read the whole story, but we'll get the flavor. I've done some cutting and clipping, and you'll get the idea. This is from a true story. Everything I write has got a certain element of truth in it. I don't know that that's a good thing. Walk-in box. Steve had an eye on Angela. Angela couldn't help it. As the guys at school would say, she was choice. It was on account of her he went to Diacolino's Delicatessen looking for a job, his first. He'd come in a couple of times to pick up sliced turkey, provolone, and prosciutto for his mom, though they weren't Italian, and behind the counter there she was. And when no one seemed to be looking, she tucked her chin and leveled those dark eyes at him. Looking straight out at him, looking in. Though she went to St. Anselm's parochial school, not his public school, he asked around, found out she was 14 and a half, with him already 15, close enough to make him think he had an edge on the bulky, slick-haired Goombas that liked to hang around. And there were always guys in attendance. The neighborhood knew this place as a front for her father Dom's sports book, and for several other minor but lucrative sidelines licensed to the family. There were barrels of olive oil in the basement being bottled and labeled extra virgin without benefit of inspection. There was a franchise in hand-lettered votive candles. There were midnight shipments of spices, pimentos, pasta. There was a back room that always had a couple hangers-on playing cards, having a sandwich and a cold one, a bowl of minestrone, a plate of noodles and gravy. So the day after school let out for the summer, he came in and respectfully approached the boss, Dom Diacolino. Steve wasn't a bad-looking kid, and he had changed his shirt and combed his hair for that first impression. He'd caught the boss sweeping out the back room while there wasn't a card game going on. Such a nice day, there were no loafers watching TV soaps and reruns. Dom took one look, reached out to shake his hand, then leaned in close to study him. Without a word, checked his shoes, his pants, his fingernails. Finally, he twirled the push broom around on one corner for emphasis while he said, "We don't have no job descriptions. We get slammed, you got to be willing to jump in with both feet. Think you can handle that?" And as soon as he nodded, so did Dom. Then the boss took off his green apron, handed it and the broom to the kid, said, "Here, show us what you can do." And he tied the thing around himself, still warm, and made himself useful the rest of that day. By sundown, exhausted from being run hard with his brain on overload, but the job was his. He caught on quick. And for all Angela was a willing, quiet worker, he could feel her catching on to him. No collisions, no more bottomless stairs, but in the store's dim-lit, narrow aisles, an awareness silently shifting past one another. But around her, there was no opportunity for talking, none, because one or the other of her parents or her Uncle Vince was always there, always had something for him to be doing till it felt like everyone in this little world held the power of life and death over him. Besides, nobody took a lunch break. They all would snatch half a sandwich on the fly. But one day, the second week in, when he was helping unload a truckload of frozen meats. Wheeling a hand truck from the cobbled alley the back way into the walk-in box, she waylaid him, pulled him to one side in among the hanging meats, and planted a kiss, long and slow and sweet, delicious as a ripe plum being plucked. From then on, that's where and how they met, several times a day colliding in the walk-in box. Nobody else could stand it, even the hottest days, even with a coat plus mittens and ear flaps, but it gave these two lonesome, silent ones the excuse to get close in this heartless, workaday world, keep each other from freezing to death. From the first, his relationship with Angela was dreamlike, rarefied. It had appeared all at once with a kiss and was full-blown that instant. Remember being in love when you were 14 and a half, 15? He wondered at every little thing about her, how she could get her feet in and out of her sneakers with those silver, blue, and green double laces that ran parallel like a ladder then just disappeared at the top. How she could settle her hair with just a toss of the head. How she kept the spaghetti straps of her bra and her flimsy, sleeveless summer blouse perfectly aligned even over a long day of work. How she ate salads and sandwiches by making a bird's beak of her fingers that would nibble a bit free, then find her mouth. For him, their kisses were endlessly surprising, since she had such a restless sweet tooth. That first one, minty, then bubble gum, then cinnamon, clove, milk chocolate, on and on. So over the dreamy course of the summer, their romantic dumb show shambled on. As it got hotter into August, they could spend longer in the deep freeze. Though shivering and goosebumps remained unromantic, managed to rattle them loose from each other's half-frozen grip. Then all at once, the end was in sight. He hadn't known it was coming, couldn't have imagined, so had no way to plan. And what could he have done anyhow? He hadn't known that on Labor Day, D'Aquilino's delicatessen always closed, but there it was spelled out in magic marker taped to the front door. The staff and regulars and extended family had an end of summer picnic at Coney Island, for which Dom supplied a mountain of sandwiches and snacks, coolers of beer and wine and soda pop, and passed out rolls of tickets good for all the rides, a legendary form of largesse in the neighborhood that found its way to him without his lifting a finger. Early that morning, when Steve showed up for work, he was recruited to help pack and load the feast into the huge green Pontiac station wagon with magnetic signs on its doors that was soon down flat on its springs, the row of coolers roped onto its open tailgate. He was a little surprised when Dom waved him into the back seat next to Angela, where they couldn't help but be crushed together by the relatives who piled in for the drive. And at the picnic, after they helped unload and lay out the spread, Steve and Angela caught their first real break. Dom pointedly handed the two of them strips of tickets, said, "Here, why don't you kids go have some fun?" So they got in line for one of the roller coasters, and liked this ride that only took a minute and a half, and did everything. It was neither too wild nor too tame, shook them together, lifted and dropped them, took them right to the edge, left them breathless. So they just stayed on, staring straight ahead, holding hands, handing the ticket taker more tickets each time they screeched to a halt in the station, sat in the same seats and rode it 27 times in a row. Talked in between rides what little they could, though it seemed too weighty for such a bright sunny day with strangers swarming around, and while they had so much of each other for the moment, somehow irrelevant. So they tamed the ride and also unpacked a few random things. Her favorite breakfast, 2 eggs over easy with Italian sweet sausage, hash browns, toast, and each slice a different jelly. His a mountain of blueberry pancakes, a side of bacon, and new for him, black coffee. Angela said they were going to make her take plain geometry in school this fall, which he'd already had so could help her. She described how she wanted to redecorate her room with rock posters and a sound system, only keep a couple of her old stuffed bears. They spoke lightly and briefly of ambition. Steve admitted he had no idea what he wanted to be, where he was going. He told her his dad was an accountant, so he wasn't scared of numbers. When he talked about saving for a car, she lit up like he'd offered her a bright bird that in a heartbeat might fly them anywhere. He told her sometime he'd like to drive out here to the beach, watch a really big storm roll ashore. She nodded, seemed to understand exactly. When they got to that 27th ride, it seemed so slow they kept their hands in the air all the way. Then they stood up, needed to find restrooms and answer her craving for cotton candy. After that, they walked the beach, well away from the delicatessen crowd. In one stretch, as they picked through couples on blankets, smiling and apologizing, he saw how young and unspoiled she was in the eyes of these others underfoot, how genuine. And back in the open saw they didn't need to talk now, so for a while lapsed into a comfortable silence, their hands swinging between them perfectly in step. They didn't stop until they noticed the light fading. Then he took her face in his hands to kiss her, her cheeks sticky, tasting of cotton candy that he wanted to lick, but stopped himself. Then they turned back. When they finally found the picnic spread out on blankets, it was sunset. Most of the regulars had left. They picked through the food until Mrs. D offered them a couple of meatloaf sandwiches she had hid. Then Dom approached and asked if the boy would come with him. He had something to say. As Steve got up, he could feel Angela's eyes on them, but by the time he turned around to follow Dom, she looked away. You'll have to finish the story.
Ah.